to Data Dragon, and in today's video we will discuss about integration runtimes. So in Azure we have different integration runtimes. One is Azure Integration Runtime, Self-Hosted Integration Runtime, and SSIS Integration Runtime. So to begin with Azure Integration Runtime, so this is used for copying data between cloud sources and running mapping data flows and orchestrating activities that don't need on-premises access and executing may built-in many built-in connectors. So it is serverless and auto-scaled by Azure, global region support, and no VM maintenance or patching. So in ADF we have two type of Azure integration runtime. One, we will see auto resolve integration runtime. Auto resolve means it always connects to its nearest location. If you click on auto resolve and you can see the region is auto resolve, meaning it automatically connects to the nearest region for better performance, and networking and everything is handled by Azure. Also you can create your own Azure integration runtime, and you can also specify a particular region, and also you can give it a virtual network configuration, and that is a typical Azure integration runtime. So Azure integrations runtime, we have uh, auto resolve, which is completely managed by Azure, and the region and everything is managed by Azure. And Azure integration runtime, if you have specific criteria that only in this particular region and within that particular virtual network you have to run that, you will be creating your own Azure integration runtimes. And coming to self-hosted integration runtime, these are usually used when you have to perform something that is out of Azure and within on premises, like somewhere out of Azure. So you have to copy this self-hosted integration runtime package and that machine in that environment, and that is how ADF can connect to that machine in a foreign location. So majority of the use cases are mostly on-premises file transfers, be it on-premises SQL server and on-premises file server. So how it worked conceptually is like you install SHIR like in that particular environment, and it opens outbound HTTPS, meaning it can only communicate through this particular port with ADF, and then ADF sends the jobs to SHR via Azure Relay, and SHR connects locally to your on-premises sources and reads the data and sends to the cloud. And we have SSIS integration runtime used when you want to keep your existing SSIS ETL logic and you're migrating from SQL Server or SSIS to Azure, and you don't have time, resources to rebuild everything using data flows or Databricks. So when to use which integration runtime, like when to use IR, like I said, you use this usually when you are dealing with any cloud to cloud migrations, and self-hosted is used when you are dealing with on-premises use cases, and SSIS is when you have an existing SSIS packages and you want to work with them. That is when you want to migrate them. That is when you use SSIS integration runtimes. And now networking and communication port and authentication. So coming to Azure IR, networking runs in Microsoft Cloud and supports public endpoints by default, and can use private endpoints just like we just saw. We can just also use a virtual private endpoints as well. And authentication is usually via managed identity and service principal or SaaS token, and self-host integration runtime network installed inside a corporate network or an on-premises. So in case you are working in a personal project, you usually install that SHIR in your personal system, but in an actual production environment, what you'd basically do is you create a virtual network, and within that virtual network you create two virtual machines, like one you will have for your on-premises database and it has a private endpoint, and you create a virtual machine where you install the integration runtime, and using that integration runtime you connect with that on-premises private on-premises database through that private endpoint, and Azure communicates with that integration runtime, and that integration runtime connects with the database, and that's how the communication happens. So you don't directly connect to that on-premises. This ensures that the data is securely transferred. And just like we were talking about 443 outbound HTTP, meaning um, because this is how it can reach Azure Data Factory and communication with Azure Data and receive job instruction and send telemetry results back. So coming to I like its authentication, IR itself doesn't hold credentials to the data sources. It doesn't have any credentials. You connect. Let's let's say you build a Salesforce integration runtime and you just give it a name. And so if you are using your own device, you can just quickly do this express setup, and you can also manual setup and use this key to connect there to register that with this particular ADF. And or else if you are using a virtual environment and virtual machine, you download, for example, you copy this link and use this link in that virtual machine, and you install everything over there. So yeah, once you downloaded, go to the link and download the integration runtime. This is what you get after you download, and this is how you register to. This is how you register the integration runtime with the ADF. So in behind you can see we created it, but it since it is has not registered yet, it is in the process. You can see it's unavailable, but once it's registered and done, you will find the status as running. Yeah, you can see it's running right now. So this is just a computational power, like more like an energy or more like a running ability for the local databases to run. So what you will do is you go back to your pipeline, and if you wanna do a copy activity, and if you wanna um, create a SQL database migration or something like that, just quickly check. And you will create a new link service, and in this link service you can see this integration runtime, and this is where you give the credentials of the database, and then it connects. So usually but I'm not gonna do this because don't have a currently any active databases in that in my local. But usually I'll be creating a dedicated project where I'll be showing how we do a migration project from on-prem to cloud, where what you basically do is you create a virtual network, and in that you'll create two virtual machines. In one virtual machines you have your on-premises DB running, and through that it exposes a private endpoint, and through that private endpoint we create another virtual machine where we installing the integration runtime, and ADF connects through our on-prem database through that virtual machine where we install the integration runtime, and integration runtime communicates with the database through that private endpoint. So we always make sure that the data transformation and in our data communication will always happen in a private endpoint and in a private network for ensuring the maximum security. So now let's see, um, use this is like when to use. Like I said, Azure is used when the scope of the project is within the cloud, and self-hosted is where we use, again over here the VMs are again exist in the Azure. And now coming to the networking, for self-hosted integration runtime, the key port to mention is always 443. So in virtual machine, when while you're running, you will be using this particular port, because only this particular port can help us communicate with the can reach the Azure Data Factory. And for Azure integration networking, integration runtime, everything is handled by Azure. And the authentication, you can see there are three types of authentication that is supported by uh, Azure IR. Like for auto regress, for auto resolve, Azure completely manages everything. But if you have to create an custom Azure integration runtime with your own credentials of and your own region, then you can also do that. And here, installing and self-hosted, like I said, you will just go to manage and you just create a new integration runtime, and you just simply download this and download and just copy this key, and that just installs. See, if we did not register it, it shows unavailable, but once we register, it shows running. We can remove this for now. Coming back to here, how we can scale up and scale out, because the on-prem DB is not consistent, like it's not constant. The data may increase, the data may change. So in that case, we have to change the VM capacity, like the CPU and the RAM, while creating the VMs. And in case of scaling up means increasing the capacity in lengthwise, meaning you give more computational power to the VM in order to run it faster. Whereas scaling out means you create something like a multiple machines, like as you can say, install SHIR on multiple machines using the same IR key, in the sense you can just find this. So you can use same IR, and you can just create uh, multiple self-host integration runtimes. Whereas if you have a different data sources, you can just use that approach. And high availability, how we can ensure that it is high availability, meaning in case of high availability, we just need to make sure that we are just discussing here only the problems with the integrations runtimes only. Like if any other uh, service create a problem, that does not comes within the scope. So only the high availability of self-hosted integration runtime, we can use at least two SHIR nodes in the same IR in the sense using the same key. And we can also put them on a separate VMs or even separate physical host. If one node fails, the other one will take over, and we constantly monitoring how the SHI is performing, what is the load it is going through, and something like that. Yeah, for now, uh, this is all about integration runtime. In a dedicated video, we will be creating self-hosted integration runtime and end-to-end on-prem to cloud migration project, like how in a real world, in a real environment, like in real corporate environment, we'll be doing that by creating a virtual machine and by creating a virtual network and all. Yeah, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.